Today's episode, you guys, is brought to you by Perfect Storm Real Estate Specific Software. It's the website I use in my business. I'm actually a partial owner within the company that's been able to give my input to help create a piece of software that is uber effective at lead generation in our real estate businesses. That website, www.perfectstormnow.com. Go check that out. It's amazing, epic front-end lead generation site that's extremely affordable for real estate agents out there. Also, today's episode is brought to you by our 90-day mastery bootcamp. If you're in the real estate industry, if you're wanting to take your business to the next level, this is a gnarly, crazy experience. We go through for 90 days straight. There's there is 13 total sessions that we go through. Each weekly session is about 2 to 3 hours long every single week. Plus, you have daily access to me going through the experience through the group. So to check out more about that program, we roll those out about every 90 days. We stagger them once in a while, but we do about 3 or 4 of those every single year. So if you want to spend the next 90 days with me, about 40 hours of just crazy epic content helping your business take it to the next level, go to www.90daymastery.com. That's our sales page. You can see testimonials, learn more about the product, and register and sign up right there. If you are signing up, make sure to use the promo code LiveMastery, all caps, all together, all one word, LiveMastery. It saves you $500. It makes that whole entire 90-day coaching experience only $997 for you guys. So, all right, let's jump on in. What is up, my friends? Joshua Smith here with another GSD interview. Every single week, we interview top entrepreneurs and just straight up top people that are out there doing big things in their life, that are dominating their space, that are choosing to go out there and create epic lives. So today, we have a special guest on, a guy that I'm really excited about, another fellow podcaster. But this guy's a financial coach, retirement planning expert, and it's something we talk about so much on the show, making money. And I thought it was really important to get a guest, get an expert that can talk to us about how to save money, how to prep for that future retirement. So I'm really stoked and honored to have Roger Whitney on the show today. Welcome to the show, my friend.
I got to tell you something. I feel pretty young and hip being on this show. I think I'm hitting the upper limits, but I feel pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man, and really honored to have you here. I know you're a guy you've got a lot going on between business, everything else that you're doing, but I know you probably didn't always start there. So let's rewind the clocks. Let's go back in time, rewind the clocks to, high school, college. How did you get started into entrepreneurship, and what led you to where you're at today?
Well, it wasn't intentional on the entrepreneurial part of it, although both my parents own their own business. So I grew up in that mindset. And then one of my sisters owned her own business. So I got out of college. I went to Michigan State University, go Spartans.
Yep.
And got a job negotiating leases for Radio Shack here in Fort Worth, Texas. So I moved out. I followed a girl down to Texas and caught her and married her, still married to her. But so I started negotiating leases, and it was just sort of boring. It was, I could do all the work in a few hours and just sit around all day, and I was hitting those upper limits pretty quick. And I had a buddy that was a stockbroker. I'm like, well, I'll try that. So I did, and I was blessed to be in the beginning stages of the great bull market of the 90s, and I was blessed and cursed at the same time because I basically traded stocks with clients and made good money. They made good money, and it was really easy. And man, I'm pretty smart. And then life happens, and you realize markets don't go straight up, and you realize you're really not that smart. That was the journey I had. But about 8 or 9 years into that, I realized that my core competency was more in helping people make smart decisions. So I left the broker dealer I was with and went to a big wirehouse and met my business partners there. But slowly, as I matured, I realized I cannot work with inside the system because I had my own ideas, my own ways of doing things, and I knew I was right, in my mind anyway, and you can't do that in a corporate environment. So in 2003, my 2 partners and I left and started our own investment advisory firm, and now we're about 13 people, and I feel like, in my 40s, this is the sweet spot.
Yep. No, I love it, man. So, when you make that transition, because when you go from corporate to being an entrepreneur, and a lot of our listeners are in corporate America, and they're using the show for guidance and inspiration to make that transition, because there becomes a lot of challenges. Not only do you need to focus on taking care of your clients, but now you're running this business. What were some of those, kind of initial challenges, maybe that you weren't expecting, that or maybe harder than you anticipated?
Well, it's like evaluating any private business deal. So when I evaluate private business deals, it's like looking at a business plan, right? And when you're in that dream stage, we're all optimistic and we're working through whether it's a formal business plan or even just a napkin business plan, and it's all going to work, right? Any strategy, those sales numbers are going to grow just like we assume in the spreadsheet. Well, it doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
Any business plan looks great on paper, but it's all about execution, and that's the hardest part. So for us at that time, my wife wasn't working. I had a son who was 7 or 8 and a daughter that was 4, and we didn't take income for 9 or 10 months. So I was living off of fumes in terms of my savings, knowing that it had to work out. And that's good motivation. Now, I don't recommend that, but I guess the point is whatever kind of runway you think you need money wise when you're making that transition, double or triple it, because it takes a lot longer. And those statistics of when businesses fail, mainly they fail because they didn't have enough liquidity or money to get to the point where that flywheel catches and they actually start to have positive cash flow. So for that was probably the hardest thing on my end, but I was so confident and busted my butt that I didn't, I look back and it's like, man, that was a pretty ballsy move. But, at the time you just feel so confident in what you're doing. Yeah. And I was blessed that we had clients that I just had to basically ask them to remarry me at this new firm. So it wasn't like I was starting from scratch. So I was a little lucky that way.
Yeah, so you talk about, okay, it was 9 months without a paycheck. When you have clients that maybe are thinking about making this transition for themselves, what do you recommend? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? What do you recommend? Because I couldn't agree more. I mean, I own and operate 4 businesses, and every single one of them, it was a lot longer and a lot harder to become profitable than I ever planned or ever, initially fathomed.
Yeah, and it goes different directions. The market, you think the market's here, but it really might be this way, and it takes a little time to figure that out, right? So the answer to retirement, you use the statistic of, everybody's sort of screwed in retirement, unless they're wealthy. A lot of that is because we still think of retirement as not working, right? As my grandparents and your great grandparents probably, that you won't work and earn money anymore. So you better save up a big stockpile to take care of it. Really, a lot of the answer to retiring, even if it's someone my age in their 40s who really wants to be more financially independent, is having these cash flow sources from business, consulting, whatever it is. So what I consult clients with, I focus a lot on that in my practice outside of just investing, is, okay, I'll give a good conversation. I have a gentleman who wants to retire and he doesn't have enough money to retire. So he's thinking he's going to start a lawn business because he likes to work outside in the yard and everything else, and he works on a ranch here in Texas. So he's putting together the plan that in 5 years' time, he'll go spend all this money, buy the equipment, and then it'll work. And I'm like, dude, this is what you need to do. You need to start with whatever lawn. You need to go get a lawn in the neighborhood right now and test it and see if you even like it before you build this grand plan. Why don't you go take your weekends and go do some yards and maybe pick up a crew and test it? That's like firing that little bullet. It's not going to blow you up. And you'll know really quickly whether you really want to do this. And that way you can make all your mistakes now while you have your day job. So I think that's one of the better strategies, is rather than how much money do I need for that runway. That's important. But even before that, go test this stuff on your own time while you still have that day job so you can figure it out.
Yeah, and so many people just, they don't think they have the time. They have this excuse that, I'm in corporate America, maybe working 40, 50 hours a week, and I don't have the time to go start this business. Well, there's 168 hours in a week. You can go out there and work another 50, 60-hour career pretty hardcore and do both. So I love that, man. So, your focus is helping people with their retirement, planning with that. And before we started, we were having a brief conversation there with a stat that I just heard, which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to have you on the show, is that 98% of Americans today at the age of 65 cannot retire without being fully reliant on their kids to take care of them. They're not fully reliant, but they may have Social Security and 401ks coming in, but they now become a liability to their kids. That's scary, man.
Scary for the kids.
Yeah. I mean, I look at that too. I'm like, man, if I got myself in a position where my kids couldn't send their kids, my grandkids, to college because they're taking care of me, I don't know if I could live with myself. Right? Like, it's just a thing that I don't want to put myself into. But success comes from the planning. So what are some of those key things that when you meet with new clients or you're seeing with your average Americans out there, like, hey man, if you guys don't wake up and start doing a few of these things, you're going to be in some trouble.
Well, there are so many different layers to this, Joshua. It's one is we're still planning my profession, right? Our industry is still planning retirement like it is. I get to a date, I retire, and I don't work and I don't do anything, which is an antiquated way of thinking about retirement. The problem is we don't have a new word for it. Is it financial independence? Everybody has been, sold that retirement is get to 65 and stop working. And I'll tell you from my journey, walking this journey with people, they're doing stuff. I mean, they're doing stuff just because they want to. And a lot of times people are making money into their 60s and into their 70s. I have a 74-year-old client who's a doctor. He works 3 days a week as a doctor just because he loves it. And the money is part of it. So unlike any other generation, so I'm not quite a baby boomer. I'm below that. And I don't know what you are below me. XY or whatever the term is. But right now, baby boomers, when they retire, they're healthier, they're more educated, they're more active and engaged than any other generation in history. So even at age 60, if you're a boomer, you're really not ready to check out. So I think the boomers are the first ones that are changing this whole paradigm of what retirement is. Because they're still wanting to do things. I have very few clients that are retired and aren't doing anything. They're working, they're just doing it on their own terms. So I think that's a big part of the solution that doesn't get factored into those stats. And so what can you do? The earlier you start realizing this whole idea of retiring and doing nothing at 60 or 65 is bull. I need to start noodling on what can I be doing so I can work on my own terms and have more control over my time, which is really what we want, right?
Yep. So really, I mean, with a lot of your retirement planning, I mean, it really comes down to you being a business coach and a business consultant, trying to get them to go out there and create other businesses, other streams of income. Is that correct?
Yeah, I treat every individual like their own business, whether they work for a company or not. So let's talk about a business. It's exactly like a life. So we got Joshua here. Joshua has personally with his family 1 to 3 to 5 year goals, and then he may have a long-term vision. So key is know what that sprint is to those 1 and 3 year goals, and then that vision for Joshua is going to drive a lot of things. One, we're going to look at cash flow, which is the lifeblood of a business, right? Free cash flow, having your revenue be above what your operating expenses are and being able to get a good margin. Same thing in a family. What is your lifestyle budget and what kind of revenue or income are you bringing in? Same difference with a family. And then having a balance sheet of what all your assets are and what all your liabilities are. We call it a balance sheet in the business world. We call it a net worth statement in a person's life. And just like you probably in your business, if you have free cash flow, I'm assuming you do, Joshua, if you're making money and having an income, then it's how do I allocate this money on my balance sheet to serve what I said those 1-3 year goals were and those long-term vision was. So what can you do with that free cash flow if you have excess earnings in your business or in your life? Well, you can do a couple things. You can give it away, charity. You can reinvest it in the business. So like in your business, it might be reinvesting in new equipment, hiring an employee, marketing or whatever else. In your personal life, it would be reinvesting in your skills, in networking in your industry or starting a side business. It doesn't necessarily have to be investing in stocks and bonds and things like that. Reinvesting in the business is really reinvesting in you personally by doing the side hustle things and starting businesses like you're talking about. That's where that's going to be the engine of the growth. Or it could be paying down debt. It could be saving and protecting the assets on your balance sheet. So there's only so many things you can do, and it's working through that hierarchy is how you make good decisions. You have to figure out what you're trying to accomplish, but it's no different than running a business.
Yep. No, I love it, man. So, making additional revenue is key, right? We all want more revenue. We need more revenue. But what do you dive into when it comes to spending? Right? Because it just seems like this whole keeping up with the Joneses game is one of the most dangerous games people play, and it seems like a lot of people, it's not always the revenue; it's just they have a spending problem. So what are maybe some of the tactics that you teach on to have that awareness? Because a lot of people just have no idea how much they're truly out there spending and wasting.
Right. And same thing with a business. And we see that in businesses all the time where they get in love with being a business and then they buy the nice office and all the nice furniture and they like the trappings of the business rather than the actual business. And it's the same thing in life. And managing your cash flow is extremely important. Now, I'm a financial guy and I hate budgeting. I do not keep a budget, which is like sacrilege, right? I'm supposed to be in Mint or Quicken or something, keeping a budget, but I just hate budgeting because I hate being a bookkeeper of my own life. I got enough numbers to deal with. And whether I overspend in the entertainment category or my wife overspends in groceries or I overspend in groceries, I don't care. That just sets up really rough conversations. But what's the point of budgeting? The point of budgeting or managing your lifestyle is to capture that excess income, right? And not let it get flitted away to your lifestyle. So what I recommend that people do, and this is getting to your point of how do you control your lifestyle? One is some people just won't. So I have a buddy who is very wealthy and he realized long ago he can't stop spending. So he just had to bust his butt to make sure he made a lot of money. I guess that's one approach to it. But so what I do is I have all of my income from whatever income sources I have go into an income account. And then I have a whole separate account, which is my spending account. And my wife and I decided long ago, it takes X amount to run our household. I have 2 kids, so it takes X amount to run our household. Let's just say it's $10,000. So all of our income comes into our income account. It doesn't go into an account that we ever spend out of. And then once a month, we transfer over our lifestyle budget to our spending account. And we spend that down to almost zero. And then my excess earnings builds up in that spending account. And then every 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, depending on how greatly it builds up. As that builds up, we decide what we're going to do with all that excess income in that spending account. That allows me to control my spending because I only have $10,000 in a month in this example. So people generally, assuming they don't use credit cards, will moderate their spending to what they show in their bank account, right? So we always feel a little bit poor towards the end of the month. So we sort of curtail some of that discretionary stuff. But the problem is a lot of people have their income coming into their account and then they look up and they're like, where'd it go? And well, it went someplace because you knew it was there. So you try to not let people know that it's there. So that's what I do. It's just the easy way of getting around having to be a bookkeeper.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of percentages that you follow of, hey, your personal operating expenses should be X% of your gross income or below that to make sure that you're not getting above your means?
I don't. But I think the earlier you start some type of method where you say anything above this, I'm not spending, because this is what's happened with us. Because, I mean, I've had some very hard financial times earlier in my career because I was spending when I was in the 90s, because it was great tech stocks, I was spending money on my future growth because, hey, man, my income's going up, by X% a year. Well, that means I can spend into that. Because, gee, it can never go down. Yeah, it can. Yeah, it can go down by a lot. I found that out. And so I put my family in a situation where I was spending, assuming that we were going to make the same kind of cash flow, and almost blew us up. I mean, we sold our house, bought a house for, about a third or half of what the other house was, and really had to redesign our lives because our spending went down when I was making a transition in business. That's what you have to avoid. I don't use ratios, but once you cap it on that spending account, what's happened with us is right now I'm saving about 40% of our income. And it's only because I've never let my lifestyle creep as we've had business success. I mean, a little bit here and there, but nothing extraordinary. What ends up happening is most people, because their income comes into their spending account, they don't even capture it anywhere else.
Yep. So, how often, how frequently are you paying attention to that, having conversations with your wife about these things to make sure that you're in alignment with this, that you're not exceeding those? Because it's so easy, man. It's so easy to, okay, now we are making way more money. Well, okay, we can give in and, start doing this. What does that look like?
Well, are you married?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. How long have you been married, Joshua?
Gosh, we've been together 18 years, married for about 10 now.
Okay. So a while. So what's the secret? What's the secret to a good marriage? I want to hear Joshua's secret. Then I'll explain how I do this.
Yeah, see, and I'm kind of cheated because I did a lot of research on you, and I heard what your secret is. And I agree with it, right? Constant communication, respecting each other, but constant communication.
Yeah, for me, I never want to have a big conversation with my wife. That's the way I say it.
Yeah.
And because big conversations suck, that means that something was left unsaid and festered inside the other person. And with money, it's definitely that way. So what we do is, because you're always going to have extraordinary expenses, we just make sure we have a conversation about them and we are aligned with them. So we have a conversation about money because she doesn't pay attention to any of it, about every 3 to 6 months, depending on what's going on. Like if we want to do something to the house or we want to go on a trip, we tend to start planning that about 6 months in advance because I want to make sure we're building up the cash in anticipation of that. But the key is to have the conversation. Generally one person in the household is managing all the money. So let's say that's you, Joshua. Well, then you end up, if you don't have a system in place that you've agreed upon, you end up being the one going to her and saying, man, I wish you would have told me you would have done that. And then you get pissed off about it. Or you even think it in your head, man, why did they go spend all that money over there? Don't they realize what we're doing over here? Because you're not talking about it. So the key is to have those little conversations, especially about money, because it will really blow up if you don't. Because what will happen is one of you will start to hold some resentment, whether it's you asking about expenses and she's like, well, why is he asking me about that? And then she starts to get her own thoughts in her mind about what your intent was, even though you were just asking an innocent question. So we have those conversations every 3 to 6 months. We update our net worth statement every 6 months and review it. And that's a good framework for where we're at, because your net worth statement is crucial because it will blow through all the BS of good intentions. So if you had excess cash flow and you blew it, it's going to show up in your balance sheet by the fact that it's not there.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. And people say, okay, money's not everything. And I agree with that. But I've been broke and I've had money, and life's a hell of a lot more enjoyable when you have some money, right? So we got to pay attention to it. But there's like this weird stigma in society where people just don't want to talk about it. If we sit there and talk about it's rude to ask how much do you make or how much do you earn. There's like this negative stigma to even think or talk about it. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's like a defense mechanism where people do that so they don't have to actually face the truth?
I think it's a couple of things. One is probably we're all just embarrassed, right? We're all a little embarrassed about what we look like if we looked at our net worth statement. And I think two is, most people don't address this stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, most people just want to live their life. They don't want to think about money. They don't want to think about retirement. They don't want to think about estate planning. They don't want to think about any of that stuff. They just want to live their life. They want to go have a beer with their buddies. They want to watch the football game, do whatever they do. And then it's only during those, there has to be some kind of pressure point. My sister died last year. Well, I should probably get an estate plan. And that's like the window when your eyes are open from the matrix and you can go do something. But most of us just want to live our life. And that's cool. But then you end up never having the conversations, right? So you just need to have a framework, and you can make it. I have a client who he and his wife have had a date night on Sunday night for 10 years, and that's always when they talk about the household business. And they do it over wine at the same bar. Everybody knows their name. So you just have to create the time and the purpose. I mean, a good example is, and you probably had this, you want to talk about some financial issue, you're working, you got the great studio, you're going all day long, and okay, I'm going to go home and talk to my wife about this. And then, man, when you get home, you just don't want to do it. You want to just be with her or be with your kids or with your dogs. So what you need to do is set the date and say, honey, on this date, we're going to this restaurant and this is what we're going to talk about. And that way it's taken off the table and all you got to do is show up and participate.
Yep. And I find that commonality with uber successful people that are also married. It seems like they are having that conversation weekly at this time or whatever that looks like. But like you said, it's that dedicated time. So back to when you're coaching and consulting your clients on potentially starting a business, where do they start to look, or where do you tell them to start to look? How do you start instructing them on that? You talked about, okay, let's go out there and split test it and kind of make sure that there's a market there first. But how do they know even what market to get into?
Well, that's really hard because if they don't know what market to get into, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this. I'm sure you have probably more insights in this than I do. If they don't know what market to get into, then they start to think about buying a franchise. So they just go try to co-opt somebody else's dream and concept, which can work, but it's just a heck of a lot more money, right? You're buying into somebody else's system, which means you're stuck in their system and you got a lot more capital up front that you got to spend, a lot more obligations, possibly have to borrow money. We tend to take more the Dan Miller type of approach. If you know who Dan Miller is, wrote a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love, where what are you good at and what's your passion at? I mean, I have a lady who I worked with long ago. This lady, she made like 80 grand a year repairing flags out of her house.
Yep.
I'm like, what? And she was explaining to me, I was working in Dallas, not Fort Worth. And she says, well, I knew this guy that ran a property management company. And he knew I liked to sew, and he had these flags in Dallas. It's pretty windy. And he asked me if I would repair one, and I'm like, sure. Where you start to look, and every building has 3 or 4 flags outside their building. And there's a lot of buildings in Dallas-Fort Worth. So she built a little niche just out of what she does. I'm like, that's brilliant. That's the kind of thing you want to do. I have another gentleman who was an IT director of IT for a major organization here in Dallas. When he retired, he became a handicapper because he loves horse races. And that was his passion. And he started to write a little newsletter and started to, that's his passion with his career. So I like that approach much more than let's go find a franchise and try to recreate somebody else's model, just because there's so much more capital involved. And you're really putting yourself on the hook. And if you're thinking about doing that, especially if you're close to retirement, man, you can't screw that up because you don't have the time to make that capital back if you don't. So I like the lean startup approach.
Yeah, the lean startup plus in business, if it's not something that you absolutely love, you're probably going to quit because there's going to be some hard times. Like when you're starting what you started and going 9 months out of that paycheck, what probably kept you going is love for what you do and that vision and that passion for what you're doing. And if you don't have that, it makes it very difficult to keep going during those hardcore, tough times.
Oh, yeah, because it's a flywheel, and it takes a long time to get that flywheel to catch. And you got to show up even when it sort of sucks.
Yeah.
So you're right. You're exactly right.
So as far as you personally, what do you do to goal set to make sure, because good is the worst enemy to greatness. So it's so easy to get comfortable with the good enough. I'm comfortable. I'm making enough money. I can slow down. I can take my foot off the accelerator. What are you doing personally, whether it's goal setting, reviewing those goals, to make sure that you're not getting comfortable and you keep growing?
Well, that's why I started the podcast. So I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. It was probably 3-4 years ago now. It was the same buddy that knew that he couldn't stop his spending. So now he's very wealthy because he makes so much money. He had to make sure he had that enough income coming in. But I love talking to him, and his name's Bob, and we have these conversations. And I love talking to him because we can always check our egos at the door. We can say something and not think the other person's judging us that we think we're too big for ourselves. And so he calls me and goes, Roger, now you realize we're entering our zone of maximum power. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about, Bob? Well, think about this. We're highly trained. Okay, yeah, we're highly trained. We're successful. We got a lot of skins on the wall. Yeah, okay, we're successful. And we got a lot of scars too. So we're not talking theory here. We've screwed it up so many times that, we can actually talk from experience. Well, yeah, you're right. We have less hair, so people actually listen to us. we look the part, and we still have enough energy and that we have something to prove. I'm like, okay, you're exactly right. And I sort of poo-pooed what he said because he's so money focused and I'm not as money focused as he is. And then we hung up and I'm like, you know what? He's right. If I could easily coast and make a great life for my family and for myself from a financial perspective. But man, if I woke up at 60 and 65 and say, I could have really made a difference in more people's lives or in the world and everything else, and I just decided to coast and enjoy, I mean, that would be fun, but what a sad thing that would be. And that's what started my journey. So what I do is I hear a clock ticking. I from that point, I hired a professional coach. I really worked at what I was supposed to be doing for the rest of my life. And that's what started me blogging and started my podcast. My podcast is the current iteration of what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And it's helped me sharpen my saw because I'm noodling on the financial issues that I'm dealing with every day. And it's grown for the last year and a half, 2 years. And it's been an amazing journey. So I just keep iterating because in my mind, I'm not going to retire. I'm having a blast. When my wife is gone and my daughter's not here, I'm probably up here noodling around in my studio. I'm not golfing or anything. This is just what I do.
Yep.
It's who I am.
And then again, that comes down to the importance of doing what you love to do. Because if you love what you do, you never work another day in your life, you know? And I feel blessed to be in that same boat, man.
Yeah. Now, here's one really important point on this. And I bet you would agree with this. And this is something I had to change in my life. And it's disrupted my life somewhat. Because when I got out of that, I didn't have to hunt and kill because I had enough of an orchard that was able to sustain me. Well, everybody around me was sort of in that mode. They weren't the high growth, high expectation mindset. They had sort of transitioned from that growth mindset to just sort of, hey, this is awesome. Let's just stay where we're at. So when I was making this transition, I had to basically redesign my relationships. I had to end some relationships, not because anybody was bad or good. It was just they were not supporting where I was going. And I had to find new friends that had the same type of mindset and intentionality because you are who you're around. And especially when you start growing and the people around you aren't thinking in those terms, you're a threat to how they view their life. And this isn't bad or good. And it's not, like ending friendships, but you got to really be careful who you associate with. And I've been very intentional about that. And that's been one of the keys to that journey.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up. And it's so true that, there's a saying out there that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But it's difficult. So as you're leveling up, because everybody in your surroundings aren't leveling up with you. And this is a question I get from listeners all the time on this podcast of they're in that spot. They feel lonely in their circle. Nobody really they're trying to reach up for friends, but they don't know how to. They're like, well, I want to become a multimillionaire, but all these multimillionaires, they're too busy for me. Like, how did you go through that transition? How did you start identifying people that you wanted to have in your circle? And then how did you get to networking with them?
That's a great question because at first, what do I do? Yep. So what I did was I didn't really understand what the term was, but I started a mastermind. And the way I did that is I just, sort of like when you buy a new car. I just got a new Grand Cherokee, which I shouldn't have spent the money on, but it was okay. I like it. But as soon as you think if you want to buy a new car, all of a sudden you start seeing them all over the place, right? So your antenna's up for it. There's a name for that. I don't know what it is. But it's the same thing. What I did was I started to go to new conferences that I had never been to that were totally outside my industry. So associating with new people. And the first mastermind came from a lady and I just hit it off. And, hey, let's start a mastermind. And we just had one call, and it was just the 2 of us. And then we added 2 more people. And that's how I just started. I didn't know where to find one. And you can find them more now than ever before, especially in the online world. But all you need is one person that has an inkling of that, and you go and just noodle on, okay, what do we need to do next? What do we need to do next? Now, that one has since disbanded, and I've moved up to where I'm a member of a paid one with Dan Miller and a lot of other high achievers, and I have 2 or 3 that I'm members of that serve me in different areas. But if you can't find it around you, you just need one person. They don't have to be in the same industry. They just have to want to try to improve themselves.
Yep.
It could be a book club. Just do a book club and pick a great motivational book and start there.
Yep. Love it. So, it seems like for whatever reason in our education system, finances are never talked about, right? So, I was never taught finances in high school, really even college. A finance major just graduated college and they didn't know how to balance a checkbook. What are some of the things, you've got little kids, I've got 3 little ones myself, as parents, because we've really got to take it on as our responsibility because the schools aren't doing it. What are some of those things that we should really be educating our kids on about money to prep them for the future?
So my kids are 18 and 19. So they're not too little anymore. I'm about ready to have them out of the house. They are, and so I was a little late to the game in this, but I would say we are entering a whole new era. I grew up, I come out of college, it was get a job at a corporation. That was really the only option. Entrepreneurism, even though my parents own their own business, took a lot of money, took a lot of stuff. Now I would look at teaching kids about being entrepreneurs and taking control of their own destiny in terms of the accountability, because there are so many things that people can do. That is a lean startup that can generate income even if they're working for someone else. But I think, obviously, the basics of Dave Ramsey and staying out of bad debt and managing your money. I think that's the Dave Ramsey. I had my kids go through that, which is great for kids. That's a good foundational stuff. But beyond that is challenging them on how they think about money and business and everything else. So I'll give you an example. So my daughter, who is a beautiful girl, if you would have asked her a year or two ago what she wanted to do with her life, it would be, I want to open a tattoo parlor. It's like, okay, cool. I'm a parent. I don't have any tattoos. I was like, my wife was freaked out about it. I wasn't freaked out about it, but I was like, okay. So, Jen, what would a normal parent do? And we did this a little bit. We would know college, tattoos. You don't want tattoos. Look at you, Joshua. You don't want to look like Joshua. You don't want tattoos. You're going to hate him when you get older. We did a little bit of that just because we were dealing with our own stuff.
Yeah.
But where it really started to get interesting with her was I never said no to anything. And it was like, okay, well, tell me how you're going to do the tattoo parlor. And then just walking through, okay, well, what are you going to sell at the counter? That's the high margin stuff. That's the easy stuff, right? How are you going to design it? How many artists are you going to have? What do you think the cost might be? It's just actually engaging them in those conversations, even about your own finances, because we're a little bit different than older generations where everything's nice and hidden. But I think it's just having those conversations, just like you would even with sex and things like that. When the opportunities arise, you just drip little pearls of wisdom, hopefully, that will help guide how they think about things.
And then it probably comes down to leading by example. If we want to coach and teach our kids to be entrepreneurs, well, then parents really need to wake up and get those side businesses started, right?
Yeah, they're always watching. If you're going to if the parent's going to get it, if you're a parent and you have a side business, get the kid in there doing something.
Yeah.
You let them see the trials and the failures. But you're right. They are watching everything that we do. They are modeling. And the more you do that before your kids are teenagers, the better, because as they become teenagers, your influence in their life is going to go down significantly as they're pulling apart. So the more you can be that influence because at some point, if you're not, when they're teenagers, they're going to have influences totally outside of your control.
Yep. Love it, man. So what are your takes on college today? Because it seems like you have so many kids going to college. It used to be, hey, you go there, you get a degree, and you could get a good job. But what's the stat? 70% of them can't get a job in their field. And they're making $35,000 a year, and they're 6 figures in debt. It's a question I get a lot on the show. When parents are saying, hey, my kid's getting ready to college, should they go? And I'm like, well, I'm a college dropout, so I'm not sure if I'm the best to answer that. But, what's your take on it?
Well, I think it used to be college was just the thing, right? And I think, and I deal with this with people all the time, and this is a place where it's really hard with families, because I think there's a line between supporting your children and enabling them, right? And I think a lot of people that I see enable the children through college. I mean, spending $200,000 on a theater degree at a private school makes no sense to me whatsoever. The whole point of college is that you come out prepared to be able to actually do something, right? So I think if you look at college from a business equation, and what am I getting for the money rather than Johnny wants to go to theater school and I'm going to do it because that's what Johnny wants, and I don't care if it's a private school that costs 3 times as much as a public school. It's Johnny's dream. That's the bad thinking. I think you need to work with your kids through understanding the economics of it. I'll use my daughter again. So she was in very musical, very artistic. She draws her own tattoos that she has people do for her. She has a new one she's about to do right here, bigger than I expected. But at one point when she was in band, she wanted to go to Texas Christian University because she wanted to be part of the band program and she wanted to be a high school band teacher. So she came to me with that, and I thought, all right, I'm a financial guy. This is a great financial lesson for my daughter. I'm like, okay, honey, well, how much does TCU cost? Well, it's about $35,000 a year. Okay, $35,000 a year. What does a band teacher make in high school? I think they start in the 20s. I don't know where they start. Okay, so we're talking X amount for going to Texas Christian University to be in the band and be a band teacher, and then you're going to come out. What's the payback on that? Holy cow! And I'm like, did you realize that University of North Texas, which is about $10,000 a year, has a wonderful band program? And I was walking through all this with her, and she sort of took that and went away. And then I forget how long it was. Probably a few months later, she, in hindsight, said, "Dad, you just like crapped on my dream when you did that. It was just horrible." But those are the kind of conversations that you need to have, right? If you're going to pay for college. Now, I agree with you, and Linchpin by Seth Godin is a great book that talks about this in depth, right? You're nodding your head, so I'm guessing you've read it.
Massive Seth Godin fan.
But college is just one option of many, and I don't think everybody needs to go to college, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because look at, we can learn entrepreneurship by watching your show. We can learn about retirement planning or financial planning by listening to my show and a zillion other things out there for free if we're actually going to be doing things with it.
Yep.
So I agree with you 100%. I think it's become this rite of passage and we're enabling rather than thinking critically about it.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube's the greatest university that exists on the planet. It's free. You know, I mean, there's nothing you can't learn. You know, so
and it's not BS education. It's like the smartest minds in the world. You can go watch lectures anywhere you want.
Yep. Yeah, you look at I got an app, iTunes University, on my phone, so I can go into Harvard and take Harvard classes. Of course, you're not going to get the degree, but you can go in there and it's all free. You know, I mean, it's really brilliant. So, I mean, you've dropped some books, you've talked a lot, so I can tell that you're really into self-development. Seems like what was Jim Rohn's quote? All leaders are readers. How important is self-development to you? And maybe what are some of those most important books that you'd like to recommend to the audience that had a really profound impact on your life?
Well, it's self-development, but it's more, I'm curious and I'm engaged. I don't think of it as I'm trying to improve myself. It's just what I do. So podcasts have been a big blessing in this journey because that's a great time. So the books, I just started reading Essentialism, The Disciplined Art of Doing Less. This is my 3rd time, and this time I'm tearing it apart so I can get the message in so I don't overcommit myself again. But I'm tearing that apart. That's a wonderful book about less is more, and there's so many ways that weaves into business, into financial planning, to lifestyle management. Less is more. Don't build a cage of financial things. That's an awesome book. QBQ is another great book, which is the question behind the question and all about personal responsibility. And with all these types of things, it's like at the end of the day, we can complain about the economy, we can complain about the world, we can complain about our boss or all these expenses, but at the end of the day, we just have to figure out what can we do to improve our situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, the nice thing with people that listen to your show and my shows, they're self-selecting themselves because they already get it. That's why they're listening in the first spot. So you don't have to you're not convincing anybody. They're already there.
Yep, love it. So, okay, so you're a guy that has a very, very successful business. but you also have a very successful marriage and a very successful relationship with your kids. And I see a lot of male entrepreneurs that kind of operate in these extremes. They get really good at business, really good at making money, but their marriage fails. Their health may fail. They don't know their kids. I know there's no magic pill, but what are some of the key things that you did that you think you were able to kind of have it all and keep it all together? Because I truly believe people can have it all if they just focus and live intentionally.
Well, first off, I'm gonna have to call you out on some incorrect statements you made.
Okay.
My marriage is not perfect. I struggle mentally, internally with the relationship with my kids, and I struggle with all the regrets of the things that I should have done. Our business is good, and that is a blessing, but I don't feel like I got anything figured out. I mean, I look back and I got a ton of regrets of not spending enough time with my kids and not being there for this. And in the early parts of the business, being much more stressed out and freaked out. It's a lot easier. It's hard to explain. It's a good quote from a Russian philosopher says, you can't explain what it's like to be cold to somebody that's warm. Right. And he's talking about being in Siberia. You can't explain what that kind of cold is to somebody that's sitting in America. And it's sort of the same thing. I don't know. I think regardless of what you do and how intentional you are, you're always going to have regrets and worries about not being more of a dad or more of a husband or more of a business owner. And that's okay, because what's really releasing is at the end of the day, I don't care who you're looking at, pick an idol, pick it Seth Godin, Michael Hyatt, pick any of these, big names that seem like, man, they got it all together. You know what? They don't know what they're doing. They're in their minds. They're all just trying to muddle through and figure it out. And they have all the same regrets and all the same worries that you have. So I think it's a little bit of a fallacy that it's that great. We're all struggling to keep our marriages well and our kids in line. And it's that intentionality. When you're not worried about it, it's the guy that's not worried about it. Oh, no, my kids are okay, when he's never home. If you're worried about it, you're probably doing okay.
Yep. No, I love it. Love it. So, real quick, I got a couple last questions for you, but before we jump into those, how do our listener base learn more about you? If they want to reach out to you, maybe they're looking for some retirement planning, some business planning, want to listen to your podcast, what's the best way to get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Oh, definitely. I go to rogerwhitney.com, and that's the home of the Retirement Answer Man, and I have a You Ask, I Answer on there. Anybody emails me and asks me a question, I will answer it. I don't give advice to people I don't know, but I will answer any questions people have, and even possibly answer it on the show. So I am extremely available, because this is stuff I noodle on all day long. So rogerwhitney.com is the best place, or the Retirement Answer Man in iTunes.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. So, all right, let's say something happens, man, and you get financially wiped out. Your health's good, your family's good, all that's good. But let's say you get financially wiped out with little to nothing left. Let's say $500 left to your name. But you've retained all the knowledge that you've retained over all your years of going down this journey. What are the first few things that you would do immediately to go out there and start rebuilding what you built?
Oh, I could just name one thing. I would just call my friends.
Yeah.
All the gentlemen and the ladies that I walk life with that know me, and we all are in similar businesses. I have no doubt that they would pick me up and help me start again, either working with them or seed me. No doubt.
Yep, I love it, man. So, this podcast, just like I'm sure your podcast, was designed to go out there and have that positive impact on people's lives. Go out there and hopefully inspire people, but also give tactical information that they can go out there and apply to go out there and create their lives. Because I truly believe that everybody deserves an epic life. You got to go out there. It takes a lot of work, but you deserve it if you're willing to put in the work. So that's what this podcast was started to go out there and interview the doers like yourself, guys out there are doing it big, that are creating great lives, and deliver that inspiration to our listener base. So with that being said, do you have any last maybe words of motivation, inspiration that you'd like to leave our listeners with, so they can go out there and create that great life for themselves?
Well, I think it's our life to do what we want with, right? It's supposed to be great. It's just up to us. Probably the best piece of advice when I hired that professional coach, and I'd come to him with an idea. The one thing that he made me realize was, you know what? If you're going to execute that idea, it doesn't take much more effort just to go big with it. If you're going to do 90% of the work to make it an okay idea, just do the extra 10% to make it huge.
Yep.
It's true if you think about it. If you're already running, it doesn't take that much effort just to run a little harder and make it big. We tend to think that we're supposed to be called by somebody else, and it doesn't work that way. I mean, everything I've done, I'm not a genius, that's for sure. I just never stopped and kept trying to do it bigger and bigger. So it's not that difficult. It's just a matter of whether you believe in yourself and you realize that you're not going to figure it out. So you just need to do it and iterate a lot.
Yep, I love it, man. So to our listener base, I know we end every podcast with this, but information without implementation is the start of delusion. Information isn't power. It's taking that information, executing, taking action out, which then creates power in your world. So you guys just heard from an amazing entrepreneur, Roger Whitney, that shared a lot of just amazing nuggets, a lot of great information with you. Go out there and start implementing a few things that he recommended today. Go out there and create that life that you know that you want and you deserve. And Roger, it's been a massive honor, man. Really appreciate you being here. I know how busy you are. It means a lot that you took time out of your busy day to do this, man. So it's been an honor.
Oh, man, I appreciate this hour of coolness. I feel so cool right now. Yeah.
That was awesome. All right, you listeners, thank you guys again for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.